Hi, it's David Taylor or Mr Pelargonium, and I'm back with another video blog for the Pelargonium and Geranium Society. Today I'm going to talk about getting your pelargoniums through this last late winter period. So let's have a look. Hi, well, it's great to see you again. I thought I'd just slip in another video today, primarily because we're getting into that late winter period now. I'm filming this on the 22nd of January, Friday the 22nd, and yesterday was the 21st, and that was 1 month after the shortest day. And I always say that after that point, the light levels really start to increase. And I've noticed realistically in the last few days, it's really started, the light levels have just started to increase by slightly lighter mornings, slightly lighter evenings, and that's going to start to make a real big impact on the plants in the coming few weeks. Now, a slight caveat to that is that the weather has actually been diabolical here in the UK over the last week. It's been very dull, it's been very wet, it's been very windy. So we've not seen a great deal of that light, but that has changed last night. We've had a very cold, frosty morning here. Really hard frost on the garage roofs. And we got a good level of light. We got fantastic sunshine, and already when we had a glimpse of sunshine the other day, the sun is really beginning now to hit my glass house as it starts to raise up above the houses in the distance there. So that is going to start to really make a difference and impact the plants by giving them more light and really making them want to sort of think about starting to grow. Now, one of the main issues, though, you must not get lulled into a false sense of security. Don't start going really bonkers with, say, podding plants up or really thinking about moving plants on, because primarily, we've still got a good month of winter left yet. And I will wait until we get into February before I maybe start to think about podding on some of my smaller plants. I've got young plants here that are drinking now quite a bit. I think they've already minorly responded to the fact that we're getting a bit more light. These have actually started taking up a little bit more moisture now when I give them a water. They're drying out a little bit quicker, not necessarily because of warmth, but because I think they're sort of just seeing a little bit of a hint of a change of light levels, and so they're wanting to get away. But I will wait until February before I start potting on some of these smaller plants. Obviously not my exhibition plants. All of those have been in their final pots now for months. And for exhibition plants, you want the roots to be really tight in those pots, to really make them want to push on and bloom. So for exhibition plants, the main thing that we will be doing over the next month is stopping. 18 weeks, I think I've just calculated back that for stopping for show, our show is on the 19th of June this year. Hopefully it's still going to go ahead. We're looking at stopping double flowering basic zonals at around 18 weeks. So that'll be done in 2 to 3 weeks' time. I think I calculated that it's 21 weeks tomorrow, on Saturday the 23rd of January, until the show. So that's 3 weeks' time for an 18-week stop. You should really stagger to ensure that you've got some plants maybe that are going to be perfect for the day. But one of the problems that I have had, particularly with some of my larger basic zonals this year, is that I've had a lot of sort of dieback at the tips, mainly through the damp. We had such a damp autumn this year, and it really has affected the ends of the plants. Here we go. This is sort of typical as to what's happened. About the end of that stalk there is just burnt off, and I'm going to have to stop down at least a joint below that. It only seems to have affected my basic zonals. I don't know why, whether it's because they're slightly older plants, I've got no idea. But they're going to need a really sort of deep stop. Now, if you're wanting to do a deep stop for your exhibition plants, I would suggest that you do that at maybe 20 weeks. So realistically, that would be next weekend or certainly in the coming week. So I may look to do that in the next week. But it has happened with some of my much larger growing plants. Not anything else, none of the smaller dwarfs that I've got growing for exhibition, but for whatever reason, it just seems to have affected those. Now through the winter you will get one or two plants that continue to flower. These are non-exhibition plants, just one or two of my new seedlings that I've got come through. This is quite a nice one, a very deep, very dark pink on a plant with a really good zone. Now these colours of course will probably change to a certain extent during the main growing season, because in the winter you tend to find that plants go a different shade, a different hue to their main growing colour. I know this one is just marginally lighter, but that's looking pretty good, that one. That's done very well. Now one thing I have been doing is straightening up one or two of my standards. This one in particular, you can see this was sort of got an S bend on it really. So I've just put a stick, much like I normally do with standards, just tie it on to the length at the base, and then just tie a string to start pulling up the top part of that stem to level it off. Eventually I'll have to pull that back the other way, but the important thing to ensure that you don't overdo it, because I'll show you what happens if you do. Here is a young standard that I had that I was attempting to pull back across, and what happened is that it snapped off. But that has got quite a decent stem on it, so it's going to break out all around the top of it. So I will get some form of standard on that, but just not as tall as I was hoping. So that just shows you do need to be careful when doing that tie back, particularly if the plant is on the sort of dampish side at the root, because there'll be a lot of moisture in that stem, and so it's quite easy just to snap it off. And that's what I did. Just shows you that the best of us can still sometimes misjudge. Now the Regals that I stocked back in December, these are really beginning to sort of just shoot through now. But I'm getting lots and lots of new young shoots just beginning to break through on these stocked Regals. Getting lots of messy leaves, but that's quite normal because what the plant is wanting to do now is put all its efforts into producing new growth. So that's pretty much where I would want to see it now at this time of year. Now, as is normal, I'm continuing to feed, full strength feed, but still the majority of them are only getting feed once every 2 weeks. I'm watering, as I say, some of the smaller plants are getting watered about once a week, maybe even a slightly less than that, because they are beginning to take up a little bit more moisture. And keep those leaves relatively green by ensuring that you're giving them a decent strength of liquid feed. Right, now you may remember I did plant some seeds in my propagator back in the autumn. Now, I did actually only have 4 that germinated. I had them in there for 2 months. I always say if you're looking after them properly, making sure that the compost, the little compost block that they're in is moist. If they haven't germinated within 2 months, then they're literally not going to germinate. But I did get 4. I had 4 germinated from my Robin Louise, which an example of which is here. This is Robin Louise, named after my daughter. It's one of my own. It's a Stella variety, and I've got 4 seeds. Now these were crosses that I did over 2 years ago, in the summer of 18, which was the last year that we were in our old house. And indeed, I've got another one here. I've got a dwarf version, and showing you, just let me bypass that a second, showing you the difference in colour. This is Robin Louise, and that has got almost a purple edges to the bloom. That shows you the difference that you can get in colour of blooms in the winter, because it's a sort of pinkish, very pale magenta in the summer, but that is almost completely different at this time of year to what the bloom would normally be. So, you know, that shows you what can happen with bloom colour. So be very careful with your bloom colours. Thinking that they may have changed, they won't have changed. It's just you do get wide colour variations in plants bloom during the winter. Anyway, back to our seedlings. I got 4 seedlings from Robin Louise. It was a cross between Robin Louise and I did a zonal Gosbrook Susanna, which is a good deepish red. So I was maybe hopeful of getting something, you know, relatively dark, but I'm never too bothered about the colour. I do tend to do a bit of pick and mix really with regard to how it may end up, because the 2 genes that mix can produce realistically sort of anything. You can get a vaguish idea of how it may end up. I was probably hopeful of getting something reddish, but I've actually got quite a few reddish Stellas from Steve Pollard that I got last autumn. So we'll have to see how they go. But if they grow anything like its seed parent, Robin Louise, then they should hopefully be something half decent for shows in the future. So I think that's just about it from me. I mean, it's a relatively short video today. Obviously, keep an eye on your plants, keep the dead and dying leaves coming off, but just be patient. Don't be overzealous to really start doing things on them. Certainly, I wouldn't recommend potting up your plants into a lot of, you know, really damp, wet compost at this stage. Just wait a few more weeks to get into that really late winter period when the light levels are increasing and your plants really begin to know that they need to grow on a bit. But that's what's going to be happening now over the next few weeks. I'll perhaps look to stop 1 or 2 of my plants that I really want to cut down harder over the next couple of weeks. So we'll have a look at that when the time comes. Yeah, so it's good to think that spring is not too far away now. So over the next month, we can begin to think about what we're going to do with some of our plants. And I'll guide you through over the coming weeks what we're going to do. And remember, you've got them 3/4 of the way through the winter now, so don't fall at the final hurdle. That's all I would recommend. So in the meantime, look after them, and I'll be back in a week or 2 to see you again. Bye for now.